The first thing I noticed was the mug. It sat dead center on the dining table, like it had been placed there on purpose. Not set down casually, but intentionally, almost like a calling card. Dark red ceramic. Heavy. Thick-handled. Definitely not ours. We'd had the same set of white mugs for nearly a decade. Bought on sale when Kylie and I were still new homeowners, bright-eyed and penny-pinching. Every single one matched. White with a gray trim. Uniform. That was Kylie's thing, she loved matching. She said it gave her a sense of order. This one didn't belong. I paused in the entryway, cinnamon rolls boxed under one arm and a bag of books in the other. My daughters were laughing behind me, still hyped from our spontaneous bookstore run. May, my youngest, had picked out a detective graphic novel that she insisted she would read without skipping any of the panels this time. Ruby, the oldest, already had her nose in some thick economics textbook for school, flipping pages as she walked. Betty had stayed home, too tired from exam prep to join us. She said she needed a nap, though I suspected she just wanted quiet. "Girls, go wash your hands," I said absently, still staring at the table. Dinner in 10. They didn't notice the mug. Or if they did, they didn't think anything of it. I stood there, trying to rationalize its presence. Maybe one of the girls brought a friend over earlier? A neighbor dropped by with coffee? But we weren't really a drop-by kind of house. Then I saw the scarf. It was hanging from the coat rack near the door, thick, gray, and definitely a man's. I hadn't worn a scarf since college, and none of the girls owned one like that. It looked expensive, not department store warm but boutique-styled. Cashmere, maybe. It was casually looped like whoever wore it had just tossed it there while chatting, comfortable in the space. Something about the way it hung, still knotted, bugged me. If it had been left accidentally, wouldn't it be draped or crumpled? This looked placed. I tried to shake the feeling off. But then I noticed the couch pillows. We're not a meticulous family, but we're consistent. Ruby always arranges the pillows a certain way after cleaning, 2 large ones on either side, smaller ones in the middle. Now, they were all pushed to one end of the couch like someone had been lying down and tried to put them back in a rush. And the knit blanket that usually sat folded on the armrest? It was on the floor, bunched up like it had been kicked aside. I set the cinnamon rolls down on the kitchen counter slowly, careful not to make noise. Something in my chest tightened. It was a subtle tension, like a rubber band being pulled, not quite snapping, but stretching past comfort. That's when I heard the bathroom door open upstairs. Kylie's voice floated down like nothing was wrong. "Hey, babe, you back already?" "Yeah," I called out, keeping my tone light. "Got the rolls. Girls are washing up." She came down a few seconds later, hair still damp, tied back in a loose bun. She wore her cream-colored robe, the one she usually kept for nighttime, and had that fresh, just moisturized scent clinging to her skin. Lavender and coconut, a scent I used to love. She didn't look surprised to see me, or rushed. She looked comfortable. Too comfortable. "Did we have company?" I asked casually, nodding toward the mug. "Oh, yeah," she said, as if she'd forgotten. Mandy stopped by. Her husband was with her. They were in the neighborhood. Her voice was even. Too even. I looked back at the table. "He left his mug?" Kylie smiled like it was no big deal. "Apparently he brings his own everywhere." Said something about it being a gift from his brother. Superstitious or something. Anyway, they didn't stay long. I nodded. Right? There was something about the way she said it, superstitious or something. Like she was filling space, buying time with filler details. Her face didn't give much away, but I've lived with her for 15 years. I know when she's being genuine and I know when she's performing. Still, I didn't say anything else. I didn't accuse her. I didn't press. I just let it hang in the air. The girls came back downstairs, bickering over who would get the biggest cinnamon roll, breaking the tension with their usual chaotic noise. We had dinner like normal. Or rather, they had dinner like normal. I sat at the head of the table, nodding along, smiling where I was supposed to. But the mug was still there, like a stain on the corner of my eye. And that scarf, still draped neatly by the door, It pulled at my thoughts like a string I wasn't ready to tug. After the dishes were done and the girls were upstairs, I went into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch. I picked up the mug. It was still faintly warm. The tag on the bottom read, "Made in Japan." Not the standard mass-market kind you find in big box stores. There was a tiny chip on the handle, like it had been well used. Worn in. I placed it back down and leaned back. The room smelled faintly like aftershave. Not mine. Kylie walked by, glanced at me and smiled again. "Everything okay?" "Yeah." I lied. "Just tired." That night, after she fell asleep, I waited until her breathing was deep and even. Then I quietly pulled one of the old suitcases from the top of the closet and packed it. Just the essentials. A few outfits. Makeup. The toiletries she used most. I didn't want to be cruel, just prepared. I carried it to the bakery after midnight, through the back entrance. It was quiet. The ovens long cooled. The air filled with faint scents of flour and cinnamon. I stashed the suitcase behind the sacks of sugar and flour, where no one would find it unless I showed them. Then I just stood there in the dark kitchen, listening to the hum of the fridge and the soft ticking of the old wall clock. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel angry yet. I just felt cold, like I'd stepped out of my life and into someone else's. Because once you see the mug, you can't unsee it. That night in the bakery, after leaving Kylie's suitcase behind the flour bags, I didn't go straight home. I sat on the prep stool by the back door, lights off, the hum of the walk-in fridge in the background. It was almost meditative, like the bakery was holding its breath with me. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. A text from Kylie. "You okay? You're quiet tonight." I stared at it for a long time before locking the screen without answering. Truth is, I hadn't been okay for a while. I just hadn't let myself admit it. You don't want to believe your wife is lying to you. You don't want to imagine that the person you built a life with, built children with, is slowly slipping away from you right in front of your face. But the mind catches signals long before the heart is ready. And I had seen plenty. First, it was the gym thing. Out of nowhere, 2 months ago, Kylie announced she was joining a women's fitness studio across town. I supported it. I've always encouraged her to take care of herself. She used to hate gyms, said they made her feel judged. But now she was suddenly going 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. Always at night. Always alone. I'd offered to go with her once, just trying to be supportive, and she laughed. Not mean, but dismissive. "It's for women only," she said. "You die in a bar class anyway." She started coming home late, usually around 9:30 or 10. Claiming the traffic was bad or that she stayed to stretch or talk to some new friend from class. But she never mentioned names, never had stories. And the weird part? She never came home sweaty. Her makeup was always intact. Not smudged or worn, but fresh, like she'd just reapplied it. And her hair, it wasn't pulled back or messy like you'd expect after a workout. It was smooth, styled. I remember one night, she walked in wearing leggings and a loose pink top. She kissed me on the cheek and smelled like sandalwood, not sweat. I glanced down and noticed her shoelaces weren't even tied. That was the night I started taking notes. Not literal ones, not at first. Just mental snaps *ts. Times, outfits, changes in mood. She began guarding her phone, too. For years, her phone would buzz on the counter and she wouldn't blink. She used to leave it face up, even unlocked. But now there was a passcode, and the Face ID, and suddenly her texts required privacy. She'd tilt the screen away from me when she sat beside me on the couch. Started charging her phone in the bedroom, on her side of the bed. I asked once, half joking, "What's with the Fort Knox treatment?" She shrugged. "Work's being strict about security. Client stuff." I let it go even though Kylie worked in hospitality, not cybersecurity. And then came the retreat. She told me on a Wednesday morning, breezing past it like it was nothing, that she and 2 coworkers were doing a weekend spa getaway in Oakbrook. Supposedly something their manager had offered as a reward for exceeding their quarterly targets. I wanted to believe her. Really, I did. But her story had holes. First, she left on Friday morning, before the workday began, and said they'd be staying until Monday evening. I asked if it was company-sponsored, and she said yes, but she paid for her own Uber. Then she said her boss couldn't come, even though she was the one who booked it. On Sunday night, I called the hotel she claimed to be at, just to confirm her room number. The front desk told me no one under her name had checked in all weekend. When I asked her about it later, she gave a vague explanation about how one of the girls booked everything under her own name to get travel points. Which girl? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She blinked. What? Who booked it? She hesitated just a second too long. Mira. You don't know her. It was a small pause, but it said everything. From that point on, I started checking our bank statements. Nothing invasive. Just enough to track expenses, shared accounts. I was looking for peace of mind. But what I found just made it worse. There were Uber rides from unfamiliar addresses. Short trips, sometimes just 5 or 6 minutes apart, all within town. Nothing that matched the places she said she'd been. Then came the flower shops. Small purchases. $18, $22, $35. All in random towns around ours. The one that gutted me most? A $270 charge at a boutique hotel 20 minutes away. I stared at that charge for almost an hour, just sitting at the kitchen counter with the laptop open, the glow of the screen making everything feel sterile and distant. That same day, she told me she was at her sister's helping paint the guest bedroom. I even remember the paint color she claimed they were using. Seafoam mist. The lies were getting more detailed, which meant they were getting practiced. The hardest part was pretending not to know. Sitting across from her at dinner, listening to her talk about the bakery's new seasonal display like everything was fine. Watching her kiss the girls goodnight like nothing had shifted. But it had. Ruby, the oldest, noticed something too. One night when Kylie was at yoga, Ruby knocked on my office door holding her laptop. "Hey," she said, peeking in. "Do you have a minute?" "Yeah, what's up?" She sat down slowly. I wasn't snooping or anything, I swear, but Mom left her browser open on the kitchen computer. I straightened up. She was looking at apartment rentals. My stomach dropped. Downtown. Studio apartments. 1-bedrooms. She hesitated. Some of them were for 2. I didn't react. Ruby closed her laptop and sat in silence for a moment. "You know, right?" she asked quietly. I couldn't answer. She nodded to herself, then stood. "Just so you know, I'm on your side." She walked out before I could even process it. I remember just sitting there, hands flat on my desk, my heart not pounding but steady. Steady like someone waiting for a verdict they already know is coming. I didn't sleep much that week. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured that mug again. The red ceramic, the chipped handle, the way it had sat in the middle of our dining table like a placeholder for someone I hadn't met yet. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't always come like thunder. Sometimes it comes like fog, slow and suffocating. You don't even realize you're drowning in it until it's already filled your lungs. I didn't plan on catching her. Not that day. Not like that. It was a Tuesday, warm for late October. I was supposed to open the bakery at 6, but one of the mixers had jammed the night before and I didn't sleep anyway, so I left the house at 4:30. The streets were quiet, that kind of early morning silence that feels borrowed. Too peaceful to last. But I didn't go straight to the bakery. I went to the warehouse district. That probably sounds random, but it wasn't. I remembered seeing an Uber charge on our account from there. Small, maybe $14, from a week ago. She told me she'd gone to a networking mixer at a wine bar. But when I looked up the pickup address, it wasn't a wine bar. It was a motel. Not one of those seedy highwayside joints with flickering neon, but one of those oddly tucked away places with big windows and no sign out front. You wouldn't notice it unless you were looking for it. I was looking. Her car was there. I parked a few blocks away and walked the last bit. Hoodie up, coffee in hand, pretending I had some place to be. But when I saw it, her silver Mazda, the side mirror still cracked from the fender bender she had back in May, everything in me went quiet, like my body knew it before my mind caught up. I leaned against a rusted railing across the street and waited. It wasn't long. 15 minutes, maybe 20. He came out first. Tall, athletic build, button-down shirt, laptop bag slung over his shoulder. I didn't recognize him. He wasn't from town, or at least not from our side of town. He had that polished, clean-cut look you don't see much in Briarville. Not unless someone's trying to be seen. He walked like he was comfortable there. Then she followed. Kylie, wearing the navy blue dress I bought her for our 10th anniversary. The one she'd claimed didn't fit anymore. Hair curled. Lipstick subtle but present. Her posture was relaxed. Too relaxed. Like she was in familiar territory. She stepped out, holding her phone, smiling at the screen. Probably texting him. Probably telling him something flirty or stupid or sweet. Something I used to get. Then she looked up at the morning sun and closed her eyes for a second, soaking it in. She looked peaceful. And that broke me more than anything else. She had peace. I stood there, watching, not breathing, not blinking. I didn't move. I didn't yell or run across the street or demand an explanation. I didn't want one. I had all the explanation I needed. She stood there for another minute, then got in her car and pulled away, heading in the opposite direction, probably going home to get ready for work. I stayed where I was. My coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway. I stood there for 10 more minutes, just letting the weight of it settle on my shoulders. It wasn't rage I felt. Not even heartbreak, really. It was confirmation. I'd been walking around with suspicion like a splinter lodged deep under the skin. And now someone had finally pulled it out. It hurt, but in that strange way, the kind of hurt that says, now you know. Now you can stop pretending. I drove to the bakery in silence. Didn't turn on the radio. Didn't make my usual morning call to the flour supplier. Didn't even glance at the cinnamon roll order list Betty had pinned to the dashboard for the high school fundraiser. I just drove. By noon, I had made 3 decisions. First, I removed Kylie from the bakery's business accounts. Quietly. I didn't send her a text or call her office. I logged into the account and removed her access completely. Changed the password. Locked the accounts. If she noticed, she didn't say anything. Second, I closed all shared credit cards. Left her with her personal card and her savings. I wasn't trying to trap her. I just didn't want to finance her freedom while she dismantled the life we built. Third, I contacted a lawyer. I'd met Ron Staley once before at a Rotary Club lunch. He was sharp, discreet, and hated drama. My kind of guy. I sent him an email that afternoon. Subject line: marriage dissolution consultation. He replied in under 10 minutes. Let's meet tomorrow morning. I'll make the time. That night, when I got home, Kylie was already there. She was in the kitchen, humming, making pasta. The scent of garlic and cream sauce filled the air. For a second, if I didn't know better, I might have believed we were just a regular married couple, living a quiet life. She turned around and smiled. Hey, you're home early. I nodded. Slow day. She plated dinner, poured 2 glasses of wine, and talked about some coworker who got engaged. She laughed. She laughed like she still belonged here. I ate in silence, each bite tasting like ash. After the girls went to bed, she suggested a movie. I said I was tired. She kissed me on the cheek, said, "Love you," and went upstairs. I stood in the living room, staring at her wine glass. Lipstick print on the rim. Same shade she wore when she walked out of that motel room. I washed the glass and put it away. Then I sat down at my desk and finished what I started. The divorce papers were clean. No accusations, no theatrics. Just facts. Timeline. Asset division. Custody request. My lawyer said the simplicity would work in my favor. The next morning, I had the papers delivered by courier to her office. By noon, she hadn't texted. By 5, she hadn't come home. At 7:15, I got a single message. Can we talk about this? I didn't respond. Instead, I sent a follow-up message to Ron. Confirm she received them. We move forward regardless. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not because she asked me to. Not because we'd argued. Because I needed space. Because I was done lying next to a stranger and calling it love. The morning after she got the papers, Kylie came home. Not with fury. Not even with tears. She walked in like it was any other Thursday morning, dropped her keys in the bowl by the door, and stood silently in the foyer like she'd forgotten how to be in our house. I was in the kitchen making coffee. She didn't speak right away, just lingered there, as if her shoes might turn her around if she stood still long enough. "You served me," she finally said. Not angry, not surprised. I nodded. "I did." She stepped in slowly, fingers tightening around the strap of her purse. "You didn't even talk to me." There wasn't anything left to say. I could feel her watching me, but I didn't turn. I added creamer to my mug and stirred slowly. I wasn't going to offer her any. "Don't you think we owe it to the girls to—" "To what?" I said, finally facing her. "To keep pretending?" Silence. She didn't argue, didn't deny, just gave a faint nod like she'd rehearsed that moment too. Then she walked past me, up the stairs, and didn't come down again for hours. That evening, I gathered the girls in the living room. It was time. Ruby was home from college for the weekend. She said it was just to help with bakery stuff. But I think she knew. Betty was curled up with her laptop, still in her hoodie and gym shorts from practice. May sat on the floor, drawing something with a mechanical pencil. Probably another comic she wouldn't let anyone see. I sat down slowly on the ottoman across from them. "There's something I need to tell you," I started. Ruby glanced up immediately. Betty took out one earbud. May didn't move. I didn't ease into it. No metaphors. No sugarcoating. "Your mom and I are separating. She won't be living here anymore." Ruby exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a month. Betty blinked twice, then sat up straighter. May's pencil froze midline. "What happened?" Betty asked. I paused. I didn't want to *P***nize the truth. But I wasn't going to insult their intelligence, either. "Some choices were made," I said. "And they weren't the kind that get undone. I'm not going to speak badly about your mother. But I need you to know this wasn't sudden. I've known for a while." Ruby stood up. Not rushed, not dramatic. Just decisive. "Where's her stuff?" she asked. I hesitated. "Most of it's still upstairs. Can I pack it?" I didn't stop her. She walked straight upstairs without another word. Betty looked stunned. Not crying. Just processing. May still hadn't looked up. "She was gone a lot," Betty said quietly. "I thought she was just tired of us." "No," I said, my throat tightening. "She was tired of something, maybe, but it was never you." Betty nodded. Then she leaned her head on my shoulder and didn't say another word. When Ruby came back down, she was carrying 2 garbage bags. Her mother's sweaters, toiletries, the silk robe Kylie always wore on Sundays. She opened the front door and set the bags outside, one on top of the other, like she was taking out the trash. She didn't slam the door. She didn't even look back. May was still drawing, but I noticed her lines had gotten darker, angrier. I waited until the other girls had gone to their rooms before sitting next to her. "What are you working on?" I asked gently. She held up the sketch. It was a family portrait, for stick figure people standing in front of our house. Me, Ruby, Betty, and her. No Kylie. I didn't react. I just nodded. "That's a good drawing." She set it down and finally looked at me. "Did she leave us? Or did we leave her?" That one hit hard. I thought about lying, about saying something soft and vague. But she was 13, not stupid. "She left," I said. "But not all at once. And not completely. Sometimes people leave a piece at a time." She didn't cry. She just nodded, picked up her pencil, and added a dog next to her figure. Later that night, after they were asleep, I sat on the porch with a blanket over my shoulders and watched the wind pull leaves off the maple tree in our yard. They scattered across the driveway, a mess I didn't have the energy to clean. Kylie still hadn't come back down. I texted her at 11:04 p.m. "You should stay somewhere else tomorrow. This isn't working." She didn't reply, but in the morning she was gone. No note, no conversation, just absence. I didn't tell the girls. They didn't ask. Over the next few days, we settled into a new rhythm, clumsy, but real. Ruby started making dinner 3 nights a week. Betty offered to drive May to school even though it made her late for homeroom. I started leaving the bakery early when I could, just to be home more. Not to replace anything, just to be there. There was a stillness in the house now. Not sad. Not yet peaceful. Just quiet. But it was the kind of quiet that lets wounds close. One night, Ruby came into the kitchen while I was doing dishes. "She's going to regret it," she said, unprompted. I didn't answer. I didn't even know what part she meant. The betrayal, the leaving, the silence after. "I mean," she continued, "I don't even think she realizes what she gave up." I dried my hands slowly. "I don't think it's about realizing," I said. "I think it's about caring." Ruby nodded, lips pressed tight. "Well, care. And we're going to be okay." It wasn't a question. And I believed her. That weekend, I took May out for pancakes. Just the two of us. She ordered strawberry with whipped cream and barely touched them. Instead, she talked about art school. About drawing people the way they really feel, not how they pretend to. "She used to look sad," she said, stabbing her fork into a syrup puddle. "Even when she smiled." I didn't say anything, because she wasn't wrong. Back home, Betty was playing piano in the den. Something slow. Something that filled the house without drawing attention to itself. Kylie hated when the girls practiced in the evenings. Said it made her head hurt. But now the music stayed. That night, I found a sticky note on my nightstand in May's handwriting. "I'm glad you stayed." I didn't cry. Not then. But I held the note for a long time, like it could keep me anchored to something solid. Maybe it did. Because the truth is, I didn't feel like I had won anything. This wasn't triumph. It wasn't some big declaration of self-worth or victory. It was survival. It was dignity. It was choosing to stop asking someone to stay who had already left in every way that mattered. My daughters weren't looking for a hero. They were looking for someone who wouldn't lie to them. And after all the quiet, all the slow unraveling, I finally had something solid to give them. The truth. You'd think in a town like Briarville, the story would spread like wildfire. And in a way it did. But not with pitchforks. Not with whispers behind church pews or gasps in the frozen food aisle. No one cornered me at the gas station asking what Kylie did or why she left. There were no pointed questions. No drawn-out, sympathetic sighs. Instead, they showed up. Quietly. The first came on a Monday morning. I was restocking the front counter when Mrs. Halpern, a long-time regular, walked in. She's in her 70s, always orders the same thing. Black coffee and a plain croissant. No butter. That morning, she slid 2 20s into the tip jar, looked me straight in the eye and said, "For the girls. Education's expensive." She didn't say another word. Just walked out, leaving her croissant untouched. By Wednesday, it had become a pattern. Customers started tipping more than they ordered, 5s, 10s, even 20s. Some of them added notes folded inside the bills. "Hang in there. Stay strong. For May's sketchbooks. Integrity matters." At first, I thought maybe it was coincidence. Maybe people were just feeling generous. But then Betty found a handwritten card in the mail slot, addressed to the Miller girls. Inside was a gift certificate for the local art store and a message. "The world needs more women with strength. Don't let anyone dull that." It was signed by Ms. Linney, May's middle school teacher. That afternoon, I stepped outside to find our neighbor Todd crouched by my truck, tightening lug nuts. "You had a slow leak in the rear left," he said without looking up. "I swapped it out for a better spare. Got 2 new ones coming. No charge." I blinked at him. "Todd, you didn't have to." "I know," he cut in. "That's why I did." He stood, brushed his hands off and offered a half smile. "You didn't deserve what happened. Neither did your girls." Then he walked back across the street like he'd just returned a borrowed rake. Even the coffee supplier noticed. One Thursday, I got a delivery invoice marked discounted, family support. When I called to correct it, the rep on the other end just said, "We heard. Don't worry about it." I sat there for a full minute, phone still in hand, wondering how something so painful could ripple outward and bring this much unexpected grace. Not everyone said something. Most didn't. But the actions were loud. The bakery started getting more foot traffic. Folks who hadn't stopped by in months were suddenly craving sourdough, or just needed a cinnamon roll to get through the week. Some of them didn't even buy anything. They just sat, sipping coffee, looking around like they were making sure we were still standing. And we were. Ruby started helping more on weekends, running the front counter, handling phone orders like a pro. She had that no-nonsense tone that made customers take her seriously, even when she was barely old enough to rent a car. Betty took over our social media, redesigned the website, made flyers for upcoming fall specials, even convinced me to let her run a TikTok account. I didn't get it, but I watched one of her videos hit over 12,000 views in a week. She smiled when I asked her how she did it. People like stories, she said, especially the honest ones. May was our unofficial greeter. Customers loved her. She'd sit at the front table sketching in her notebook, head down, headphones in, but when people walked in, she'd glance up and smile, just enough to make them feel welcome. Her kind of quiet always said more than words. One day, a man I didn't recognize came in and ordered 3 scones. "You Grayson?" he asked. "Yeah." He nodded. "Heard you could use a win. These are for my office. I'll be back tomorrow." And he was. Every week. Not because we were a charity case, but because people could tell when someone kept showing up, even when life tried to knock them down. It reminded me of something my grandmother used to say: justice doesn't always need a gavel. Sometimes it comes in the form of good people who simply won't let wrong stand unacknowledged. I never thought much about that until now. One Sunday afternoon, Pastor Hill came by. He didn't say much, just sat across from me in the empty shop, sipping lemon tea. "You know," he said after a long pause, "people watch how others carry pain." I nodded. "I try to carry it quietly." "You do. That's why they see it. Loud grief is hard to hear, but silent strength? That makes people lean in." He left a 20 on the counter and added, "Tell Ruby she's got her mother's eyes, but her father's backbone." I didn't sleep much that night. Not from pain, from perspective. I thought about how easy it is to lose faith when someone close betrays you. How it makes the world feel crooked. Like the rules don't apply. Like good people always finish last. But the town reminded me, that's not always true. Good people don't finish last. They just finish differently. Sometimes with flour on their apron and a line of customers waiting not just for bread, but for proof that good men still exist. The girls noticed it, too. Ruby started keeping a ledger, a real one, of all the anonymous tips. "For transparency," she said. But I knew it was more than that. It was a way to measure kindness. To make sure we never forgot who showed up when we needed it most. Betty turned it into a project for school. Unexpected Economics. How Community Shapes Recovery. Her teacher asked to publish it in the local paper. She agreed. May stapled one of the notes, the one that said, "For May's sketchbooks," to her wall, right next to the family drawing she'd updated. Now it had 5 figures. The same 4 from before: me, Ruby, Betty, May, and one new stick figure standing just outside the group. Kylie. Not angry, not crossed out. Just separate. May explained it simply when I asked. She's not erased. She's just not here. And she was right. Kylie hadn't returned. No messages. No explanations. Not even a fight. And I was starting to understand something about absence. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it tiptoes away and dares you to notice. But I had noticed, and so had everyone else.